Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is where you're at. So Brett Tadlock here, TN Artist. Just wanted to jump in today and work on a new painting to kind of play around with some new stencil packs that I've put together, stencil and brush packs for Rebelle that I have over on my Gumroad channel, and kind of show how to use some of those, but also just, create another painting. So I think today what I'm going to do is work on a night painting, kind of a, Aurora Borealis sky with mountains and some cabins and stuff like that, and get a feel for it to see how that turns out. So I have a 8x10 canvas here, or really 10x8, which I think is similar to A4. And what I'm doing here is I've got it laid out on canvas texture, so that way I can get kind of some of that canvasy kind of look. And I'm going to turn on the true pigments as far as that goes there. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of work on this. And the reason I've got it at this size, the 8x10, is because one thing, it fits on the screen really well. Another thing, I can use the nanopixel export to export this out to be large enough for prints. And it works really, really well. So that is what I'm going to do. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this white canvas. So I am going to, and I'm using the mini oil pigments here, which I believe I got these off of Escape Motion's website itself, if they didn't come with Rebelle. It's been a minute, and it's hard for me to remember which one of these came with Rebelle and which ones I've made, other than the ones that just, have the explicit colors that say, yes, I made them. So anyway, I'm going to grab a little of this phthalo blue right here, and the brush I'm going to go with, actually for this, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this easy. I'm going to go ahead and go to the fill. I'm going to tell it to wet the layer, and I'm just going to fill that. So now I have this nice wet underpainted layer that's blue, and I can blend into this now, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to go over to the color here, and I'm going to come down over a little bit. I want to add just a little bit of green, bluish green kind of to this, and then come up a little bit in value. So let's see how this looks. And I want to just kind of brush these in, so I'll come back to my landscape brushes because these are more for getting some of the details and stuff. So for the blending, I'm actually going to come back over here to the oil brush, and I'll come up to the flat oily. Let's try that one. Use the right bracket key to expand it. And so I know I want to have my horizon right about, maybe right about here. So I'll press Shift, click once, draw across, click again. So now I have my line there, so I can just paint straight across. Okay, and that'll give me that straight horizon line that I'm going to want. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw in some color, and this is going to become kind of a distant background kind of look. Okay, and if I get off on this, like this is just as a guideline for right now, because this is going to be hidden, so I don't have to worry about this being super straight. It's just kind of give me an idea. But I'm going to go ahead and switch to number 4, which is blend. And then I'm going to just kind of start blending this up. And I want it to keep a little bit of a glow. I'm just going to kind of scrub back and forth. I'll pull the paint completely off the canvas and going back to that white. Okay, and so just kind of smearing this around. And I want some of the texture. I could do this with an airbrush. I could do it really smooth if I wanted a smooth airbrush. I'm going to go to the blending tool itself and soften some of this. And kind of fade it out. But like I said, I'm going to come back and I'll put a lot more texture in here, so I'm not worried if I see a lot of texture left. I just want a feel. So this, by scrubbing it in like so, is going to give the feel of some clouds and stuff off in the distance, maybe just kind of light streaking through, and I can just kind of keep going back over and softening this as much as I want. Okay, so I think that will work. For that part, we can play around with it. Actually, I may, let's see, I'll grab the airbrush real quick, go back to this dark color, fade that in. I may even go just a little bit darker. The edges here. Now what I'm doing is just kind of dropping this in to break up some of that. And I'm kind of vignetting, which means darkening the edges. Over here, I'm going to go back to in, kind of soften that a little bit, maybe pull some of that down. There we go. I think that'll work. Now I'm going to come back to my stencils over here. And these are all the ones that are in the stencils pack. Oops, I minimized the wrong thing to minimize that. So celestial is what I want. I have a couple different stars and space and moons and lightning and that kind of stuff in it. So I'm going to go with the space one. We'll expand this like so. And I'm going to come back to this peak color. And I'm going to take the airbrush and just kind of go over it lightly, especially up here and some of the areas there, and then really lightly over these down here. So they're just peeking through, and then I'll go back over these a little more intense, like so, especially here in the middle. And then fade over these ones down here in the bottom. Hit backspace, and you can see where that gave us some nice stars peeking through because we went over light. It looks like it's behind this area here, which gives it that more of that feeling of clouds and stuff. And then we've got the stars up here. So it gives us a nice effect. Favorite stencils to use. Okay, so let's figure out how we're going to do the, let's just call this layer sky. Okay, and then let's create a new layer on top and figure out our mountains and so forth, because I want this to be kind of a lake scene with mountains over here and then maybe some snowy rocky edges here and maybe a cabin or something there. Alright, so I'm going to grab my freehand tool here for the selection tool, and you can just hit M and get to it. But I'm going to go ahead and grab the freehand and I'll do the add to selection, so that way I can just kind of keep adding stuff to it. So if I have some mountains coming through and maybe got a larger one there of interest, maybe something like, maybe like I said, we'll want to have some of this come down through here like so. So that'll give me my lake over here, and that'll give me my mountains and stuff here. So I'm going to darken this in. I'll go with that dark blue that I had here. Now I want to give this some texture underneath it, so I'm going to come back over here to my oil brushes. I'm going to collapse this one, go down to my ones that I made, and I'm going to grab this mountain knife one. Okay. And all I'm going to do is start kind of laying in some texture and thinking about kind of where the slope. So like this side's kind of sloping that way, this side's kind of sloping this way, and just lightly laying it in. So you can see that's already kind of giving me some nice rocky textures. So I can hit 4 and just kind of go back and soften it. What I want to do here is kind of pull it up more towards this top edge so that I make sure I've got kind of a solid edge here. Even if it's lighter, that doesn't really matter, but I want it to fill in and give me that top section there, like so. Okay, and then I can come down very lightly and kind of go over like which directions I think everything is kind of fading to. Again, don't want to destroy all the texture I just put in there, but just get kind of an idea of where it's going to be. All right. So that's giving me a good texture for these mountains, but I need to go back to 1 and just kind of bring some of that a little bit further down in here. Now I do have, see that line that's right there? Because that's the paint buildup, so I'm going to go back and fix that in just a second. Not overly worried about it right now. Okay. And then I know in here I want to have kind of a shore of rocks and stuff here. So we'll just kind of go along the edge there, kind of defines where some of that's going to be. And then just softly kind of, I'm going like this because I'm thinking about the topography. So this is going to be kind of swirling over like that, kind of coming around. This is going to all be distant. So that'll give me a nice kind of look there. I'm going to switch to my old brush and just kind of come up and around because I know I want this to be kind of snowy. So I want this to be more of a rounded kind of thing. I can also go to 4 if I want to smooth some of that out and just kind of create the idea of some snow drifts. Back to 1. I have something maybe kind of come around here. Just kind of snow drift off like so. And then again, all I gotta do is put 4. I can go in and soften some of this back. I could switch to maybe my round, oily round brush, still on 4, and just kind of soften some of that. Now if I want to give it the really soft stuff, all I gotta do is push in and go back to my blending tool, bracket key to soften, to bring it down in size, and then just really kind of soften some of this in because I do want this to be snow here, so I'm going to create some drifts. I don't want too much texture there, but I don't want to lose it all either. So maybe something that gives me kind of that feel. So I'm going to drop down here to the sky, and I'm going to go along and kind of softly rub over this line here to get rid of it, like so. Okay. So now we've got, you know, a good layout for where we think everything is going to go for this area. I want to go ahead and lay in some stuff here for the lake. It's going to be here. Nothing major, but I am going to make a new layer. And I'm going to keep this selected. And I'm going to go Shift Control I to invert my selection. So now this is active and this is active, but I'm going to ignore that. But this right here is active for me. And what I want to do is just grab a little bit of this color here. So just some of these colors. And I'm going to come back up to flat, oily. Just going to do a couple of verticals and then in and do this vertical motion because that's going to start laying the foundation for my reflective look. So that's going to start giving me that kind of feel. Now, the other thing I want to do is I'm going to grab this really dark blue again. I'll come in over here, drop this down in size, and kind of paint it to really keep that, because this is all going to get lightened. So, but I want this really dark. Then we'll go back to in, bring that size down with the left bracket key. Again, vertical. And kind of like so. Okay. And that's going to start, which I don't know if you can see it on here or not, but it starts laying in the groundwork for where we're going to have some of these colors, shadows and stuff, all that in there. So I think it'll work. Okay. Now I'm going to do Shift Control I again. And I'm going to come back up to my mountain layer. And we're going to start laying in some of these colors for everything. All right, now I know that the sky, I want to have kind of an aurora borealis going in, and that is going to affect some of my colors. Excuse me. So we could go ahead and lay that out if we want to real quick and get kind of a feel for where it's going to be at and do that. So why don't let's go back down here to layer 2, make another layer. So let me kind of label these real quick. So we've got lake, we've got mountains, and this will be aurora borealis. All right. So a little bit of layer management there. All right. Now I'm keeping this selected for now because I want to, I'm keeping it so that I can keep these sharp edges here and play around with these a little more, because there are spaces here, like this light space here, there's nothing there. Okay, so if I just turn on protect transparency or lock transparency, that's going to stay transparent. All right, so I don't want to not be able to paint on the whole thing, basically is what I'm saying. So I want to keep this. Now, one thing you can do with this, that if you don't want to keep it selected, just make a layer below it. And there are other ways to do this, but for me, I like doing it this way. We'll just call this mountain mask. Okay, so now all I have to do here is come over to my fill and fill that in. Okay, and then I can do Control D to deselect, and I can turn off that layer. Now all I got to do is just click, and I've got that reselected. Okay, so it's just another way to do it. Now you can use the masking tools that they have here, like for masking fluid layer, and turn that into it. It's another way to do it, but I know a lot of people aren't playing around with that yet. So this is just kind of a simple way to do it, so that you don't have to worry about, wait, what does this layer do? How does that work? And affect everything, the layer below, blah, 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 blah. All right, anyway, just a quick way to do it. So back on the aurora borealis layer, and I want to, like I said, paint in some of that stuff here. So I'm going to do that. Let me save this real quick because I saw the autosave kick on there. So I'm going to save this and I'll be right back, and then we'll start with part 2.